All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pinniped Community Meeting. Today's date is May 20th, 2021. These meetings are being recorded and uploaded to our YouTube playlist. And please read and abide by our code of conduct when attending these meetings. That is listed here in the agenda. If you're watching from home, we encourage you to attend these meetings live. We meet every first and third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to engage with the maintainers in other ways, we are on Twitter and we are also on the Kubernetes Slack workspace within the Pinniped channel. If you have anything you wish to address in these meetings, bring up with the maintainers or discuss anything about Pinniped, please add that to the discussion topics down below. As you're attending these meetings, we ask that you do put in your name and the company and organization that you are representing, or if it's yourself, you're independent. We just want to get to know who is attending our meetings. Next up, we have some announcements. We released Pinniped 0.8. Does anyone want to go into further details about this particular release?
Sure. Yeah, so Oedo was a relatively small release, but has some good performance improvements as well as a couple of important bug fixes. No security bugs, but some bugs that can make the user experience a lot better now that they're fixed. So we now have some caching that we didn't have before in the client side. That helps a lot. The impersonation proxy supports more authentication features of Kubernetes, including nested impersonation. So you can use impersonation on the client as a client, even when you're talking through the proxy, which is a cool trick. And one of the bugs I mentioned is the third one there. We had a bug that caused the refresh flow in the supervisor to be broken. So the symptom of this is that you'd have to log in every 20 minutes. We fixed that. Now it's 9 hours like it was supposed to be. So thanks everybody that contributed. We cut this release because we wanted people to have access to these bug fixes now. We didn't want them to have to wait until we finish the next major features that we're working on. So yeah, that's about it. It's sort of a bug fixes release.
Great, thanks for sharing, Matt. Next up, project roadmap. How's it going with LDAP support?
Yeah, we're making a lot of progress. The first PR is merged. Second PR is ready to be merged. I imagine it'll probably get merged today. The third PR is in the works. So we're getting closer and closer. We're not quite there yet. Not quite ready to release the first release to include that yet, but getting close. Oh, you're muted, Nancy.
What about improved documentation? I know, I think Margot was working on this. Or am I making that up?
A little bit. I guess I've been sort of trying to work on some of the docs for integrations with specific identity providers when kind of between things, so that people know how to use it with GitLab or Okta or Dex specifically. So
okay, sounds like it's just an ongoing task.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then I brought up some stuff that we talked about from the previous meeting. Just wanted to know how things are going there.
Yeah,
refresh.
I can give an update on these. So we haven't backported anything related to this bug fix to the 04 release branch yet. That's still a little bit of an open question, but I think we're likely to do it. Most community users should be using Oedo now, and they'll get all of the bug fixes, everything, all the new features coming in there soon. But we did have users that were on the 04 branch, And so, and there's an API change between the 04 branch and the latest code that requires a careful upgrade. So we'll probably backport that just so those users can get some of these quality of life improvements, even though they won't get like the new features that we're building now. And then the impersonation proxy deployments, we did some research there, discovered that some of the defaults that we'd shipped in 070 and 080 weren't ideal for some users. And so we're working on adding configuration options. Now we've been working with someone from the community who was having an issue and helping us design this new API. So Margot and I have been working on this new API. I expect it to merge relatively soon. That'll be in the next release, along with LDAP, which I think is almost wrapping up as well. We're making really good progress on both of those.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. And as far as discussion topics go, it looks like you have something in there. Do you want to share your screen?
Sure, yeah, I can. Let's see. Okay, so we have an open issue for device code flow support. We had originally had this pretty high in our roadmap. We were planning to work on it immediately following LDAP. And then we backed off a little bit because we didn't have any real use cases, concrete use cases to validate the design. And we were, we think this is a good feature, but we were worried that if we went out and just built it, we would get some of the details wrong and it wouldn't actually be useful. And then we'd have a backwards compatibility, API to work around. So at the time, we kind of set it aside and we put it back on the, let me go ahead and show you our roadmap. So we, at that point, moved it down here to the sort of exploring / ongoing section of the roadmap. So still something that we think we want to do, but we're not really sure when we're going to do it because we didn't think we had enough details to get started. That's changed actually. So we've gotten feedback from some users that they need to use the Pinniped concierge and supervisor through an SSH jump box, sort of a Bastion jump box setup. And the current flow is awkward in that scenario because the place where you run the CLI has to be sort of the same machine where you're running your browser and to get the local host part of the flow to work. So device code flow will support that use case. And now that we have some concrete validation of that this feature is needed, and we have somebody that can help us validate the particular design, at least for that one environment, and we'll try to generalize. I think this will go back on the roadmap. So we haven't decided this officially, but that's what I'm thinking we'll come up with. I'm going to do some roadmap planning next week as well. But essentially, what I wanted to talk about today is get into a little bit of technical details and have a little bit of discussion about the device code flow support, which is defined in for OAuth, and some alternative flows that are similar but sort of not standard, but might actually fit our use case better. So the standard flow here has to support some use cases that we don't need to support. So in the device authorization grant flow, you may have used this on like a smart TV or something. If you want to sign into Netflix, you pull up the TV app, it does an exchange with the server in the background and gets a short code. And then on another device with a web browser, like your laptop or your phone, you go to some URL, you type in that short code, that interaction with like the Netflix auth server in that case sort of unlocks that device, authorizes it, and then it's able to get a token on your behalf and sort of be logged in. So we needed something similar, except in our use case, I don't think we need to worry about having short code that you have to read off of one screen and type into another. Like very, very often in the use cases that we care about, even though we're talking about two different hosts, you're sort of interacting with both of them on the same monitor, and it's easy to copy paste a link or to click a link in a terminal session and have it open locally. So there's a bunch of complexity that comes along with this RFC that's essentially to support that use case that we don't have. And so that's one of the reasons we might avoid it. Another reason is that like the libraries that we're using to implement OAuth and OADC, Faucite doesn't have any support for this yet. So we'd be building all of that from scratch if we go down this route. And because it's a standard and it covers all these edge case, all these sort of use cases, it probably wouldn't be a great idea to just implement a tiny part of the spec. If we're going to say that we support this spec, we should probably like dive into it and actually implement sort of a good amount of the spec. And I'm not sure that we want to do that. So if anybody else is familiar with alternatives here, feel free to jump in and present. But the alternative that we're looking at, or another alternative I've considered, which would be sort of in support of this same story, is the flow similar to what Concourse CI and their CLI Fly uses, which is well, I don't know, Ryan, are you comfortable explaining how that flow works? I think you had a little bit of experience.
Yeah, maybe I could just show it. I don't know if I remember it off the top of my head. I wonder if I try to,
I think,
use Fly.
I can summarize my understanding.
Matt, could you walk us through the use case of the Bastion one more time?
Yeah, sure. So in this scenario, I'm a user. I have Pinniped installed with the supervisor. But when I use kubectl to access my clusters, I'm actually running kubectl on some like a Linux VM, maybe somewhere that's sort of inside my network, my corporate network, my production network.
Right, and it has access through the Bastion to your
right. And so
cluster.
from that remote host, I'm able to connect to my cluster, and then sort of where my actual laptop is outside of that private network.
Got it.
And then, so one of the assumptions that we're making, which we weren't sure about, and now I feel a little more comfortable about, is to say, even though that connection between the Bastion and the workload cluster is maybe inside this private network and it's hard to access, you're still serving the supervisor endpoint, the browser supervisor endpoint on a place where your laptop browser can get to it.
Understood. Yeah, thanks.
So the fly CTL flow, is my understanding, is basically very similar to our flow by default, which is the CLI starts a localhost port, kicks off an authorization flow that at the end will redirect back to localhost with an auth code. Except instead of redirecting directly back to that callback, the server recognizes that special pattern. And instead of redirecting your browser straight to the callback, it redirects you to a sort of a static page, and JavaScript on that page does a post to the localhost endpoint. So the behavior is basically the same in that case, except that the JavaScript code also detects when that connection fails. And in that case, it prints out the code to the screen, just displays the code to the user to copy paste instead. Does that sound right to Ryan?
Yeah, I actually have it up on my screen if you want to show a quick screenshot of it. It looks like this. Here I am trying to execute a command even though I'm not logged in. And it prompts me to log in by clicking on this URL. I click on it. It opens the browser on the right. And it has this nice little UI that it actually depends which browser. Some browsers will just automatically fire the callback back to the CLI and it won't even show this page. Safari must have some kind of security protection that prevents it from doing that. So instead they show this page where you can click a button to try to fire the information back to the localhost listener on the CLI, or you can copy the token directly and then use it directly.
Yeah, so the advantage of this is I think it might be simpler to implement because all we're doing is swapping out the final redirect of the auth code flow with a piece of JavaScript and some HTML, basically. There are probably fewer changes to integrate it into Faucite, the library that we're using. The downside, I think, is actually a UX thing, which is you still have to copy and paste that code from one screen to the other. So like in the device code flow, that never happens. You see the link printed out to open your browser, you click it, your browser opens, you're logged in, and then the command immediately finishes. There's no final step of copying it back over. I was also originally worried about the security implications of copying a secret token, because then it's like in your clipboard and you might paste it in the wrong place, and that could be disastrous. But actually, I think we figured out that the thing that you're actually pasting there is an auth code. So it's only good for one use, and it's actually bound with something called PKCE. It's bound to the client already. So basically that code is useless to anything other than the place that you're supposed to paste it. So security wise, I think it's fine. Usability wise, I think maybe device code flow is slightly better, like because there's sort of one fewer step to log in for the user. But I'm not sure we need to make a decision today. I just wanted to sort of bring it up for discussion because I think it's going to be pretty soon. We're going to be ready to sort of move these stories back onto the backlog and prioritize them and start working on them. I wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to participate in that decision before we get started.
It's definitely a plus one from me because I've seen this. It's a very real world situation, right? Where you have public clouds with the Bastion host, and then you're trying to access your cluster, and so definitely a plus one on this.
There's another use case I didn't mention. This is one that we haven't validated directly yet. The other use case is I'm a user in a corporate setting where I can't run I can run the Pinniped CLI on my host machine because it's been allow listed. But when it tries to open a listening port, that gets blocked by some piece of like a corporate host firewall. So that's a thing that we've observed in other settings. We hypothesize that probably Pinniped users will have this issue too. And I think either of these approaches also solves that use case.
So is there anything further you wanted to talk about with that, Matt?
And I don't think so, unless anybody has thoughts to share.
Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to bring up outside of that? Oh, okay, well, short and sweet. The way I like it. Well, thanks for some good discussion here. If you're watching this from home and then any of these items feel like you're interested in helping out or contributing, or if there's any feedback you wish to provide to the maintainers, please join us on the Kubernetes Slack workspace in the Pinniped channel. All the maintainers are there, including myself, and we're happy to help out and guide you in the right direction. If you want to meet up with us live, we meet every first and third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So we hope to engage with you in one of those options. Thanks.